everybody, and welcome back to Blue Jays Today. We're your boys. We always got something to say about the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host, Adam Peddle.
And I'm your host, Nicholas Playlog. And today, everybody, we are going to be looking at the Toronto Blue Jays schedule because it is freaking crazy to start out the season. The MLB, they are not making it easy on these Toronto Blue Jays. So if they don't get out of the gate hot, well, it might be a long season, everybody. Before we break all of that down, please make sure to hit that like, smash the subscribe button, and let us know your thoughts about all this in the comments down below. Now, let's just immediately get right over to it. Let's flash over to the schedule, everybody. April, May, it's coming up, everybody. We're like 3 weeks away right now from actual Toronto Blue Jays baseball, and it's going to start out very difficult with Baltimore.
Yeah, Baltimore 4-game series. Obviously, yeah, they didn't have a great offseason, but still, they're a good team with young talent, and they've been kicking our ass for the last couple seasons now, and we got them at home at least to begin the season. Then, this is probably one of the easier parts where you got Washington coming in. You got to pick up some wins there in a 3-game series. Then this road trip is going to be quite a challenge. New York Mets for 3 games, Boston for 4 games, and they're a much more improved Boston team than we've seen before. And then again, Baltimore Orioles back there in Camden Yards for another 3 games.
Yeah, and then you get all the way back home and no off days at all, and then you get Atlanta. That's like a solid 2-week stretch right there. No off days. All very good baseball teams. Then you get Seattle, which should be a little bit of a reprieve.
Great pitching, though. That's great pitching. You know, that's the problem for us.
Honestly,
right?
Probably going to be a horrendous series to watch, just in terms of actual baseball. If you like offense, don't watch those games. Then Houston, then New York.
On the road, too.
Yep.
Jesus.
Then Boston again, and then Cleveland. Now, that's kind of like the stretch of time that we're looking at right here, the first month and then change. And I went through this and I was looking at these series. There's 11 series total there. 7 out of the 11, they were playoff teams last year. You know, I'm talking the Mets, I'm talking Baltimore, New York, all those teams. And that doesn't even include 2 whole series against Boston, who, let's face it, should be a playoff team this year. They are much more improved.
And to sprinkle this in, too, just insult to injury, Seattle's still a good baseball team. They won 5 games last year?
Yeah.
And they've had our number for seasons now. And then Washington, they are the easiest part of the schedule. But that's right out of the gate, right? They're like, what if we're not even warmed up? What if we're not ready to take on a Washington team? So it's going to be very, very tough. And I was taking a look, too, at, previous, Blue Jays seasons, at what kind of start we got off to by the beginning of May. And you could see very clearly last season, by May 1st, our record was 15-17 right here.
Yeah.
And obviously we didn't make playoffs. We had a horrendous season. We're below 500. But to compare it to the last 2 seasons where we did make playoffs, well, we had a record of 18-11. And then the prior year, 2022, 15-8. We were clearly off to phenomenal starts, and that led us to going to the playoffs with 89 wins and 90 wins collectively.
Which year was? I remember there was one specific. It might have been 2023 actually, but I remember we had a historic Blue Jay start, right?
Yeah, it was this one right
here.
That
was 2023.
Yeah, I think we were 18-9 to end April at that point, which was obviously historic. And you need to get off those good starts because, first of all, that puts you really comfortable in the standings, but it also helps you just kind of relax a little bit. Helps you, if injuries do happen, you could drop a few games. You could feel good resting some players. But, for the Toronto Blue Jays, you kind of can't do that to get off to a good start. You kind of need to play every single player right now that is hot, even if they are a little bit dinged up. If they're your star, if I'm talking about Vladdy or Bo or Gosman, you need them to play in April.
Well, and for me, I think that this first month is just super important for every single player and the Toronto Blue Jays, just season as a whole, more so than some other teams, right? And I'll compare this to the New York Yankees, for instance. Yankees, they just went to the World Series. They know that we're still all in on this whole thing, right? If they get off to a rocky start in April, they have a bad month, maybe they go 500, couple games below 500 in April, that really doesn't change anything on the outlook of the season. They are still all the way in come trade deadline. They will be buying. They are going to be in the mix type thing. The Toronto Blue Jays, as much as Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro want to come out here and say, no, guys, we are all in type thing, That changes if you find yourself, with a record similar to the one that we had last year, where it's like, okay, we're below 500 now. We're not looking super great. If they come out the gate and they do have an 18-11 record, or they come out of the gate and they do end up with the record back in 2022, I mean, now 100% we are all the way fucking in. No conversations of selling whatsoever, regardless of how the next couple months even go.
Right, and I'll even add on to that, like if we do start with a record of 15-17 like we did last year by May 1st, I think there's going to be even more added pressure versus last year where we're like, okay, we're kind of okay with the idea of selling, where this year it's like, no. We're not okay with selling this year. We have to go all in. It will be an interesting conversation once we get closer to the deadline, depending on how far the Blue Jays are out of a wild card picture or a playoff spot. I feel like this year there's going to be a lot more rope because it is the final chance to go and make the playoffs with this squad.
Yeah, and I also want to kind of paint the picture in terms of the player's mindset too, right? Like if you end up with a solid start, you come out to you beat some of these good teams, right? You beat them on the road even, right? And you're looking good, you're feeling good. Well, now the whole thought process conversation in your head about shit, maybe come trade deadline I'm gonna end up somewhere else, I'm gonna have to uproot my family, I'm gonna have to do all that stuff, that kind of leaves you a bit. You're like, okay, I'm, you know what, we're banded together. Whereas if you do come out and you do struggle and you are getting your asses whooped, like somebody like Guerrero, for instance, now there's always going to be in the back of your head now, and it's going to get louder and louder. Am I going to be somewhere else in a couple months? And,
we don't want any
of that. That's the thing. You get into that mentality. It's just kind of a slippery slope, and it'll snowball. And again, that's why I truly believe this first month of Blue Jays baseball is more important than it has been in maybe any other season.
Well, let's talk about what kind of realistic outcome you got to give for these Blue Jays. A realistic outcome, and then also what is an outcome after the first month of the season that you as a fan, and you could tell all these fans right here, you should be comfortable with at least a record of X and Y.
Right. Okay, well, ultimately, looking at this, you have a lot of divisional games. You get Boston twice, you get New York once, you get Baltimore twice. We got to be able to compete in our division. And this is kind of the first litmus test to be like, okay, are we at the very least in the same ballpark with these guys? We know that Baltimore is, let's face it, they're better than us, and New York's better than us, and probably Boston too. But can we compete? We cannot be the punching bag of this division all year long. I got to see us pick up some wins against Boston and against New York and against Baltimore. I don't know what that means in terms of a record, but I got to see us, that we are not a walkover team, right? Because I look at something like Washington, and I'm like, okay, well, we're going to walk over them.
Right. You should. That should be expected.
You should. You know what I mean? And that is something that, that other teams, I don't want other teams to be thinking that about the Toronto Blue Jays after the first month of baseball.
Yeah. For me, very simply put, on the road, you got to go 500. You got to split the series against Boston there on week 2 or week 3, I guess we're looking at right here. You got to be able to grab 1 or maybe 2 from either the Mets there or Baltimore. That series is going to be very crucial. If you can go 500 on the road right there, that's great. And then again, at home against Baltimore, it's the first season, or it's the first series of the season. You gotta pounce on them, be ready to pitch out of the gate, pitch all your best guys right out of the gate. And I'm talking Gausman, I'm talking Barrios, Scherzer if he's going to be considered our best guy, Bassett if he's got his good stuff. You got to pitch every single player.
Bullpen arms too.
Bullpen arms. You got to unload in that first series because you can, I guess, afford to keep some guys a little bit, on the bench or sideline, or if they need to recover against the Washington series, recover and then get ready to play a long road trip. At home, even in the Atlanta and Seattle stretch, the Boston and Cleveland stretch there to begin May, you got to be an above average team there. And you got to pick up 3-4 wins above 500 in the total of all those series. So for me, if coming into May, if you are a couple of games above 500, I think you can be very comfortable.
I would be extremely happy with that. I'd really be extremely happy with that. I guess for me, it's, I just don't want to see us get into a hole here.
Hey guys, time for a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video. Hit your picks and knock it out of the park with Betway. Scan the QR code down below or click the link in the description to join the action. Available in Ontario only, must be 19 years older to participate. And guys, please bet responsibly. Now, back to the content.
I can't see us get into a hole because then it's, the narrative is very clear. Toronto Blue Jays, kind of the same team that they were last year, can't handle the good teams. Now, I do want to finish this podcast off on a slightly positive note. Should they leave that stretch, let's say that they're right at 500. They leave that stretch right at 500. Not really great, but at the end of the day, we didn't dig ourselves into a hole. Looking at the rest of May, it is actually like, at least to begin the season right now, maybe things change. Maybe the LA Angels are, who knows? Like the fucking God's greatest gift to baseball this year. I'm not sure. But right now, with our, I guess, predetermined outcomes of these teams, should be a lot easier. LA, Seattle, Tampa Bay, Detroit might be a little good. San Diego might be a little good. But again, like you look at that schedule compared to the one in April, and I mean, there is a clear difference in talent.
Well, after the Cleveland series, the only teams that made playoffs last year were the Padres and Detroit. And Detroit's, they had that magical run, but they didn't really do a crazy lot this offseason to improve the team. They got back Jack Flaherty, which is nice. But then San Diego, they didn't do a lot either. So it's like, okay, well, if you're going to capitalize here on anything, it's there. So yeah, you're right. If they are 500 in May, I'm expecting absolutely to be above 500. Maybe everybody's warmed up. Maybe everybody's healthy. If there's any early season, late spring training injuries, maybe they're all healthy and recovered. That's the time to pounce because let's face it. I mean, after May of last season, we knew we were out of it. We were way below 500.
We watched 2 months of baseball last year. And then it was, the narrative is, okay, like, we're done now.
We're done.
And regardless of what Ross Atkins came out and said in his pressers and all that shit, like, everybody knew that come trade deadline, we were going to sell, and that was going to be that. So that is why, everybody, we have got to get out of the gate early here. It's going to be very tough. MLB has made it brutal for these Toronto Blue Jays.
Why does it happen every single season?
It feels like every year,
right?
It feels like every year they do this to us. They've done it to us again, everybody. So the gauntlet is there. If you can prove yourself in April, you're going to be looking real good.
Yeah, guys. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Blue Jays Today, and let us know all your thoughts in the comments down below. $4 a month to become a Patreon member. Shout out and thank you to all of our current Patreon members. You guys are absolutely awesome.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. And as always,
go Jays, go!